changing. We're changing the world. You know each other?
Mr. President, how are you? Good to see you. Welcome. Thank you.
Nice to see you again. Okay.
Vice President Pam Bondi, nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Mr. President, good to see you. Yes, Mrs. Lyons, very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
My thoughts.
Nice to see you. Nice to hear you. What was it? Yeah. Thank you. Good to meet you. Thanks. Thank you.
That's good. I had no idea you were going to do this good. So I said, I think I got it very smart.
Yeah, no, it's very small. It's easier, right? What are you doing now? Do I sign here?
Grab it. Yeah.
Hola, ¿cómo están? Qué gusto saludarlos. Ahora mismo nos encontramos al interior de la Casa Blanca y específicamente en el ala oeste. Acá en este instante el presidente Nayib Bukele, como vimos, ya ingresó, ya fue recibido por el presidente Donald Trump y también la prensa. Eso es un dato muy importante que quiero compartirles. Este es todo un acontecimiento porque hay, por lo menos aquí mismo, a este sector, al lado donde nosotros nos encontramos, unas 80 o 100 cámaras de televisión, fotógrafos, periodistas nacionales, internacionales, gente de todos los medios de comunicación están acá porque no es para menos, es una reunión muy importante con el presidente Nayib Bukele, el presidente que, como todos sabemos, es el mejor evaluado en las encuestas a nivel nacional e internacional, y por supuesto también con el otro líder global, el presidente Donald Trump. Y justamente esta reunión promete muchas cosas importantes, muchos elementos trascendentales que a esta hora de la mañana todavía no conocemos específicamente qué elementos van a acordar. Sin embargo, ahora mismo se dirigen a la oficina oval, a la oficina del presidente Donald Trump, y reviste de muchísima importancia porque es la primera vez que el presidente Donald Trump invita a un presidente de Latinoamérica para poder participar en su oficina en una reunión de trabajo. Lo trascendental de esto es que también se lograrán acuerdos nacionales, acuerdos que le van a funcionar a todos nosotros como salvadoreños y por supuesto a nivel general. En este instante los medios de comunicación están ya desmontando, recibieron la llegada del presidente Nayib Bukele y están listos para participar de la conferencia de prensa, posible conferencia de prensa, pero por lo menos la toma oficial de la fotografía que se realizará en la sala de prensa de aquí mismo de la Casa Blanca, al interior de la Casa de Gobierno de los Estados Unidos. Estamos por movernos en este instante, sin embargo tenemos que comentarles también de que ahora mismo por lo menos se espera una reunión de unos 60 minutos o tal vez un poco más para poder entrar en detalles sobre los acontecimientos que van a discutir, hablando de la migración, hablando de las acciones de seguridad.
Demanded the people wanted to change everything, and they wanted. They demanded. They love you. They love what you do. You know, I'm not your supporter. I want them to do. You know, homegrown criminals next. Yeah. I said homegrowns are next. The homegrown's built. You got to build about 5 more places. Yeah, that's fair.
All right. It's not big enough.
No, yeah.
Come on. So this is a much different office than you remember. Look, this is done. Oh, you know what we'll do? Steve, you want to pull that curtain? He's appropriate to do it because he's doing such a good job.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You see it on television.
Yeah, you put up the.
Look at that. Yep, that's the original.
Wow.
There are 3 of them. That's cool.
Yes,
That's because the light.
Yeah, so you have to cover it. Right?
Yeah, well, the light
Museum
say
burn.
affects it. I don't know if that's true or not.
It's true. It's true.
They certainly tell me it is.
Yeah.
Come on. See, we even put liberals in.
Oh, well.
man, what he did to our country is just unbelievable. So we're straightening it out. We're getting them out. But what they did and what that party did to our country, open borders, anybody can come in. As soon as I heard that, I said, every prison's going to be emptied out of Georgia. That's what happened. And we're straightening it out. And we just had numbers. We had the highest recruiting numbers in the history of our country going into police departments. And a year ago, we had the lowest numbers. You couldn't hire. Biggest change. Nobody's ever lost it. And the military now, Marines, the Army, Air Force, Coast Guard, every slot is, we have the best numbers we've ever had. We could recruit numbers. And we've never had anything like it. We had records on at every single level. But very important, the policemen. The policemen are joining forces now. We're having a hard time with policemen because we weren't protecting our police. And we cherish our police. The police are great, and the firemen and everybody else. But we have the highest numbers that and the most enthusiasm. We're great enthusiasts on trade and other things. We're doing great. We're taking in billions and billions of dollars. We made 2 weeks ago. I gave them a little bit of a pause because you have to show a little flexibility. Go back. We have to do. The markets have been very strong once they got used to it. But we're losing $2 billion a day. There's no company here big like this. But we still never made. Now we're making $3 billion a day. We're a great country, but we had stupid people running this country. And I can say what they've done to us at the border should never and can never be forgotten. It's a sin what they did, and you were helping us out.
Actually, what you're doing with the border is remarkable. It's what, 95%? It's incredible.
As of this morning, 99%, 99.1% to be exact.
What are those numbers?
They get up with the fake news, like CNN over here doesn't want to put them out because they don't like putting out good numbers. They don't like putting in because I think they hate our country actually.
Yeah, that's very.
But it's a shame. You're right. Isn't that a great question? Why doesn't the media? Why do they put out numbers?
Yeah, 89%. It's like it's crazy.
You're right.
It's crazy.
Christy, could you maybe say a couple of words about the border? How we're doing?
It's just been absolutely phenomenal what a great leader can do. Clear direction, our laws matter. We should only have people in our country that love us, and the Border Patrol and our ICE officers and law enforcement officers have done fantastic work. So we're proud of them. Now we just need to get the criminals and murderers and rapists and dangerous gang members and terrorist organizations out of our country. So Mr. President Kelly, we thank you very much for your partnership. It has been wonderful for us to be able to have somewhere to send the worst of the worst and someone to partner with. And we'd like to continue that partnership because it's been a powerful message of consequences. Mr. President, you wanted people to know that there was consequences if you break our laws and harm our people and endanger families. And this is a clear consequence, the worst of the worst, that we have somewhere to put.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we even had this gang member from Venezuela, Marco, once recently. We interviewed him just to get some information, etc. from them. And he said, oh, I got arrested 6 times. But they released me the 6 times, so they should be released again. And then we said, well, what's that last thing you do? And he said, well, I shot a cop in the leg, but I didn't kill him. I just shot him in the leg. And like, this guy was arrested 6 times here in the United States, 6 times. He was released 6 times. And he was released 5 times. And the last time he was sent to El Salvador, right? So he's not getting released. But the last time he shot a cop, actually, and he shot him in the leg. So these are, like I said, there's something broken.
The liberal establishment, but they're not running things anymore in this country, and we're run by, and I don't say conservative, I don't say anything, we're run by people with great common sense.
Yeah.
Because it's all common sense, it's not liberal conservative, it's common sense. Like, do you allow men to play in women's sports? Do you allow men to box your women and boxers?
That's violence.
That's abuse.
Violence against women.
It's abuse of the law. But we have people that fight to the death because they think men should be able to play in women's sports. And for some of those sports, it wouldn't matter much, but it still matters. But some of them are very dangerous.
Some years ago, like we said, a decade ago or so, human rights were pressured. So that we enacted specific laws to men abusing women. I feel those stuff were great because there were a lot of men abusing women. But now someone, the same people are trying to fast drive and also trying to make new laws allowing men to abuse women in sports. So actually, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
You know, they have weightlifting records. A woman gets up and plays. She's incredible. A guy gets up and beats her by 100 pounds. What are you going to do? A record that hadn't been broken in 18 years. You know, they put in an ounce and an ounce, quarter of an ounce, eighth of an ounce for 18 years. Now they the guy come up. The whole thing is, but they continue to fight. And I don't like talking about it because I want to save it for just before the next election. I say to my people, don't even talk about it because they'll change. They've been bad. Well, I watched this morning. There was a congressman fighting to the death for men to play against women in sports. And you say to yourself, why? What are they doing? But your country's not too big in that.
No, we're protecting women.
It's a very important form of protection.
And as you can see, we're kind of moving. So
That's impressive.
yeah.
That's why you're.
And they're not being guy highlights or anything. They just regret what they do.
Very impressive. This is the first. We've had women, but we've never had three of them.
Four and 3 men.
You guys feel a little bit mistreated? We've been advanced. I've been very advanced in that regard too. We have families who've been announced their Christy, and the most powerful woman they say. Susie Wells. Most powerful woman in the world, according to magazines. What do I know? But I think she probably is. She probably is. And you know, Stephen has done such a great job. We have great people.
Very famous too.
But we love working with them. Let them have it.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no games. He does. Do you have any questions, please? Let's not start with CNN because they're just so wrong. Yeah, please.
This repeatedly mentioned last year that you put in was a mistake. What is the exact mistake?
Yeah. The mistake was letting the war happen. If Biden were competent and if Zelensky were competent, and I don't know that he is, we had a rough session with this guy. He just kept asking for more and more. That war should have never been allowed to happen. That war, I went 4 years and Putin wouldn't even bring it up. And as soon as the election was rigged and I was a dear, that war started. There was no way that war should have been allowed to happen. And Biden should have stopped it. And you take a look at Putin. I'm not saying anybody's an angel, but I will tell you, I went 4 years and it wasn't even a question. He would never, and I told him, don't do it. You're not going to do it. And it was the apple of his eye, but there was no way that he would have done it. Lower oil prices. If we lowered oil prices, Biden kept the prices so high because he made it impossible to get it. If you lowered oil prices, you wouldn't have had the war. But you wouldn't have had it with me anyway. That war would have never happened. I think it's a great abuse. So now what do? You get a country where 25% of its land is gone at the best locations, where millions of people are killed. You know, you haven't reported accurately the death. And this was Biden's war, and I'm trying to stop it. And I think we're going to do a good job. I hope we're going to do it. They lose 2,500 young people a week. Think of on average. Now they're Russians and they're Ukrainians, but it's 2,000. We don't care. It's like whatever it is. They're not from your country. They're not from mine. But I want to stop it. 2,500. It's a killing field. It's like the Civil War. You take a look. I look at the satellite pictures. This should not be happening in our time. Of course, our time can be pretty violent, as we know. But that's a war that should have never been allowed to start. And Biden could have stopped it, and Zelensky could have stopped it, and Putin should have never started it. Everybody's to blame.
When you spoke to the president's last Easter about his offer to purchase more Patriot missile battle rifles,
He's always looking to purchase missiles, you know. He's against, listen, when you start a war, you got to know that you can win the war, right? You don't start a war against somebody that's 20 times your size and hope that people give you some missiles. If we didn't give them what we gave, remember, I gave them javelins. That's how they won their first big battle with the tanks that got stuck in the mud, and they took them out with javelins. They have an expression that Obama at the time, Obama gave them sheets and Trump gave them javelins. But it's something that should have never happened. It's a really shame. The towns are destroyed. Towns and cities are, you know, largely destroyed. They have the spires, you know, the beautiful spires that go up. They say that we're the most beautiful in the world in Ukraine for whatever reason, but the most beautiful in the world, they're mostly laying on their side, shattered and broken. And most importantly, you have millions of people dead, because of three people. I would say three people. Let's say Putin, number one, but let's say Biden, who had no idea what the hell he was doing, number two, and Zelensky. All I can do is try and stop it. That's all I want to do. I want to stop the killing. And I think we're doing well in that regard. I think you'll have some very good proposals very soon.
last time, sir.
No, I haven't, but the attacker was not a fan of Trump, I understand, just from what I read and from what I've been told. The attacker basically wasn't a fan of anybody. It's probably just a whack job. And certainly a thing like that cannot be allowed to happen.
President Bukele, is guarantee that this time we won't terminate the temporary?
I have a great relationship with this man. I have the best relationship with him. We've known each other. I've known him since he was a very young man, as I said, very, very young. And I was impressed. I said, look here, this guy is, in fact, you sort of look like a teenager. You look like a teenager. I don't know if that's He grew up well in the last 5 years.
You support the extension for nationals of El Salvador and their.
I support him.
Do you plan to ask him?
How important is it for you to send?
Let's hear the question from this low-rated anchor at CB.
Thank you. Do you plan to ask President
Low-rated.
to help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly
Which one is it?
deported? The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs. If they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
So will you return him, President?
You are doing a great job.
Thank you, President.
You just also respond to that question because, you know, it's asked by CNN and they always ask it with a slant because they're totally slanting because they don't know what's happening. That's why nobody's watching them. But would you answer that question also?
Yes, gladly. So, Pam mentioned there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So, with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So, it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point. As two immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So he had a deportation order that was valid. which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation. This issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised with the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful, and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world. And I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
So you don't plan to
But the
ask
Supreme Court's
to get
asking
it back?
to-
Is that
What's the ruling in the Supreme Court, Steve? Was it 9-0?
Yes, it was a 9-0
In our favor.
in our favor against the district court ruling, saying that no district court has the power to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. As Pam said, the ruling solely stated that if this individual at El Salvador's sole discretion was sent back to our country, that we could deport him a second time.
Well,
No version of this legally ends up with him ever living here because he is a citizen of El Salvador. That is the president of El Salvador. Your questions about it for the court can only be directed to him.
I asked.
Se lo digo,
Can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I can't, I'm, both of them suggesting that I smuggle terrorists into the United States, right?
It's already
How
there.
could I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, of course, I'm not gonna do it. It's like, I mean, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
So you could release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing, I mean, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. We just turned the murder capital of the world to the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? That's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have the criminal, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's such a
They
fascination.
would love it.
Yeah.
They're sick, these are sick people. Mark, do you have something to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, Stephen outlined it. I don't understand what the confusion is. This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country. That's where you deport people, back to their country of origin, except for Venezuela that wasn't refusing to take people back, or places like that. I can tell you this, Mr. President. No, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. It's that simple. End of story.
And that's what the Supreme Court held, by the way, to Marco's point. The Supreme Court said exactly what Marco said, that no court has the authority to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. We won a case 9-0, and people like CNN are portraying it as a loss, as usual, because they want foreign terrorists in the country who kidnap women and children. But President Trump, his policy is foreign terrorists that are here illegally get expelled from the country, which, by the way, is a 90-10 issue.
Well, Mr. President, you said that if the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on your correspondence just a few days ago.
How long do we have to answer this question from you? Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say then,
Well, it's illegal.
why do you go over and over? And that's why nobody watches you anymore. You know, you have no credibility. Please go ahead.
President Trump, how many illegal criminals are you planning on exporting to El Salvador, and specifically telling how many are you willing to take from the U.S.?
As many as possible. And I just asked the president, you know, it's this massive complex that he built, jail complex. I said, can you build some more of them, please? As many as we can get out of our country that were allowed in here by incompetent Joe Biden through open borders. Open borders. You probably hear open borders and you can't even understand it because nobody can understand it. Nobody smart or with common sense can understand it. So we have millions of people that should not be in this country that are dangerous, not just people, because we have people, but we have millions of people that are murderers, drug dealers. They've been allowed to come into our country by other countries that were very smart. When there is this very low IQ president, by the way, I took my cognitive exam as part of my physical exam, and I got the highest mark, and one of the doctors said, sir, I've never seen anybody get that kind of, that was the highest mark. I hope you're happy with that. Although they haven't been bugging me too much to take a cognitive, but I did do my physical and it was released. I hope you're all happy with it. I notice there's no question, so probably you are. But the cognitive, they said to me, "Sir, would you like to take a cognitive test?" I said, "Did Biden take one?" "No." "Did anybody take one?" "No, not too many people took them." I said, what about Obama? Did he take one?" "No, he didn't take one either." I said, "Let me be the only one to take one." But I've actually taken them 3 times already. I like taking them because they're not too tough for me to take. But we had a great physical exam, so I know you're going to ask that. And the doctors who are total professionals. Badly wounded, lost his leg, and spent a lot of time with his mother. And it's really a phenomenal job. Walter Reed, I was there for 5-6 hours. You were there with me. But I took a full physical and it came out perfecto, so that's good. She got me for a little longer.
But did you also volunteer to pay for those facilities to be open to you?
I do something, we'd help them. Yeah, we have one. They're great facilities, very strong facilities, and they don't play games. I'd like to go a step further. I mean, I said it to Pam. I don't know what the laws are. We always have to obey the laws, but we also have homegrown criminals that push people into subways, that hit elderly ladies on the back of the head with a baseball bat when they're not looking, that are absolute monsters. I'd like to include them in the group of people to get them out of the country, but you'll have to be looking at the laws on that, Steve. Okay?
For you guys to be locking up these prisoners, and you think more presidents should follow suit like you guys as far as taking a hard stance on trying to bring that?
Well, I do. I think everybody has to. The president said it better than anybody. You know, you have liberty and you have liberty, but to have liberty, not everybody is gonna be good. And some are bad because they're sick. They're mentally deranged. They're bad.
Why do you
Then you have to take them. If you're gonna have a country, you're gonna have to take those people out. And we've been doing that. But this was like an unforced error, they would call it, where we had people that may hate our country, or maybe they're just stupid people. I think they're probably stupid people more so. A lot of people said they did it for the vote, but I did better with Hispanic people than they did because they always use Hispanic. I did better. You people love me. I saw my poll numbers in your country up through the roof, right? 91%. Some people think they do it for the vote. But they don't have to do it for the vote. They cheat, they're professional cheaters. That's about the only thing they do well. So we just have had a great relationship, and it's become bigger because of a strange thing that happened. I came back. We had no war in Ukraine. We had no October 7th Middle East problem. We had nothing. We had no inflation. We didn't have the Afghanistan, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, the Afghanistan, not withdrawing because I would have been, I had it all set to bring people out with dignity and pride. That was the worst, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, Afghanistan. We didn't have any of that. You wouldn't have had the war with Russia, Ukraine. You wouldn't have had the Middle East problem because Iran was broke. They had no money because we had secondary sanctions on and lots of other sanctions. And now every single thing, the problem with Iran, but I'll solve that problem. That's almost an easy one. We got to solve a war that should have never started, Ukraine and Russia, and we'll get that solved. And we have to solve problems, and we already solved inflation. If you look at the numbers are incredible, actually. Stock market's up, and we're not letting other countries take advantage of this country like they have for the last 40 years. So thank you very much. You have a question, please?
Thank you so much. You scored another major story with the
Thank you. Now that's a question I like. It's true. Well, it's one of the biggest announcements you'll ever hear because NVIDIA, as you know, controls that almost the entire sector, which is one of the most important sectors in the world between chips and semiconductors and everything else. And they're the biggest. And the other biggest we already have coming in and spending 300 billion, as you know, they announced 2 weeks ago. But NVIDIA is so highly respected. And this was an announcement that a lot of people, I knew it was going to happen, but not to the extent that it happened. And the reason they did it is because of the election on November 5th and because of a thing called tariffs, as I say, the most beautiful word in the dictionary. After love, God, relationship, the press actually hit me. I said, tariff is the most beautiful word in the dictionary. What about family, love, God? I got hit even on that. You understand? I said, okay. So now I say it's my fifth most favorite word because they get you on anything. But no, that NVIDIA, it's one of the great companies of the world, modern, super modern companies, controls segments that nobody, you know, sort of controls the world in a sense, and they're coming in here in the biggest way with hundreds of billions of dollars, not like millions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars, and I'm honored by it. And I want to thank Jensen and all of the people that we deal with. They're great people, they're brilliant people. And without tariffs, they wouldn't be doing it. Thank you very much. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Additional sanctions against Russia after their Visita. And do you have an update on the rate and when you might announce?
Well, I already had sanctions on Russia. I put them there. If you remember, Nord Stream 2, that's the big pipeline that goes through Europe. I stopped it. That's Russia's pipeline, the largest pipeline, I think, in the world. It goes to Germany. And I stopped it. And when Biden came in, he approved it. And then they say, oh, I'm friendly with Russia. No. Putin said, you know, if you're my friend, I'd hate to see you when you're my enemy. I stopped the biggest economic job they ever had. I stopped it cold, right? It was dead. You know that, right? And Biden came in and he immediately approved it. What was that about? And it's a pipeline that takes care of a lot of the needs. Now, you know, it was a very controversial thing, but I stopped it and Biden approved it. Question?
On tariffs?
No, not.
Pharmaceuticals?
What?
It might affect your tariffs and potentially pharmaceuticals.
Pharmaceuticals, we're gonna do. We don't make our own drugs, our own pharmaceuticals. We don't make our own drugs anymore. The drug companies are in Ireland and they're in lots of other places, China. And all I have to do is impose a tariff. The more, the faster they move in. The higher the tariff, it's very simple. It's inversely proportional. The higher the tariff, the faster they come. And, you know, we're going to be doing that. That's going to be like we have on cars. We have, as you know, a 25% tariff on cars. We have a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum. And that's what that category fits right now.
You're a percentage in market.
I have a timeline, yeah, not too distant future. We're doing it because we want to make our own drugs. We're doing it because we want to make our own steel and aluminum, lumber, other things. And they're all coming in. We have record numbers, $7 trillion. Since I announced a month and a half ago, since I came in, we have over $7 trillion being invested in the country. We didn't have 1 trillion. We didn't have $500 billion for some of these guys. They didn't know what the hell they were doing. So we have the largest investment that we've ever heard of, and we're only 2 months in. And that'll continue at levels that you've never seen before. It's going to happen. And even the stock market's up today. We also, you know, a lot of people didn't say it the way it was. We had the largest gain in the stock market in history on every single category last week. It was a nice game because we're getting limited. People didn't understand the power of our economic, our country economically if you use it right. Do you have something to say on that, JP?
Yes, sir. I mean, look, for 40 years, we have lost manufacturing capacity. Workers have seen their wages stagnate. And some of the most critical things that we need, from the pharmaceuticals, the drugs that we give to our children, the antibiotics that we give to our kids to the weapons that we actually need to fight a war. If God forbid we had to fight a war, we don't make enough of that stuff. And so President Trump ran explicitly on changing that. Yes, as the president mentioned, it caused a little bit of disruption in the market, but I think over the long term, workers are going to benefit, stocks are going to go up, American businesses are going to benefit as we reinvest and reindustrialize our country.
And the auto workers and the Teamsters and all of the unions, not traditionally Republican, but I'm winning those unions by, 40, 50 points on the Democrats. They're losing everything. They're losing everything because they just have policies that are not believable. They fight for policies that are 5% popular, and nobody knows who the 5% are. I mean, nobody can find the 5%. But if you go back to Ohio, and by the way, we have the great championship team from Ohio coming in today, right?
Very big day.
And that's going to be a little bit later. But that'll be, if you want to stick around. You'll see some very large people, right? You see some people that even you have not seen. These are big, these are 6'7", 380 pounds with no fat. Okay, that's pretty good. But the team, the national championship team, is being honored today. So that'll be exciting if you're ready. They want to stay around. I'll be up there. Tell them all about your prison, how you have to behave. Who else? Well, they have to solve their problem very quickly. Iran wants to deal with us, but they don't know how. We had a meeting with them on Saturday. We have another meeting scheduled next Saturday. I said, that's a long time. That's a long time. So I think they might be tapping us tomorrow. But Iran has to get rid of the concept of a nuclear weapon. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. You can't have a nuclear weapon. Nobody can have. We can't have anybody having nuclear weapons. You can't have nuclear weapons. And I think they're tapping us along because we're so used to dealing with stupid people in this country. And I had Iran. If you had no attacks, you would have never had October 7th in Israel. The attack by Hamas. Because Iran was broke. They were stone cold broke when I was president. And I don't want to do that. I want them to be a rich, great nation. The only thing is, one thing, simple. It's really simple. They can't have a nuclear weapon. And they got to get fast. Because they're fairly close to having one. And they're not going to have one. And if we have to do something very harsh, we'll do it. And I'm not doing it for us. I'm doing it for the world. These are radicalized people, and they cannot have a nuclear weapon. Of course it does. If they criminals and if they hit people with baseball bats over their head that happen to be 90 years old, and if they rape 87-year-old women in Coney Island, Brooklyn, yeah, that includes them. What, do you think there's a special category of person? They're as bad as anybody that comes in. We have bad ones too. And I'm all for it because we can do things with the president for less money and have great security. And we have a huge prison population. We have a huge number of prisons, and then we have the private prisons, and some are operated well, I guess, and some aren't. But he does a great job with it. We have others that we're negotiating with too. But no, if it's a homegrown criminal, I have no problem. Now, we are studying the laws right now. Pam is studying. If we can do that, that's good. And I'm talking about violent people. I'm talking about really bad people. Really bad people. Every bit as bad as the ones coming in. And I made the statement when I heard about this a long time ago now, 4 years ago. When I heard that this guy was having open borders, I said every single criminal from all over the world is going to be dumped into our country. And that's what happened. The jails of the Congo were emptied out. The jails of Venezuela were emptied out. And you know what happened? Their crime went way down. But now Venezuela has other countries. problems. You know what the problem is? They have no money because I shut off their oil and we put secondary tariffs because they're not doing what's right over there. They know what to do. We spoke to them. I spoke to them. They know what to do, but they have no money. Venezuela has no money, but Iran had no money, and Iran behaved so beautifully. And then Biden took all those secondary tariffs and tariffs on. I told China, you can't buy oil. If you buy oil from Iran, China, I told it to President Xi, then we no longer want you to do business with the United States of America. And those ships disappeared from the harbor so quickly. China, get along great with China.
The talks with Iran are productive. Do you want to continue that? The talks with Iran, do you believe those are productive? Do you want to continue that?
I think Iran could be a great country as long as it doesn't have nuclear weapons. If they have nuclear weapons, they'll never get a chance to be a great country. They will never get a chance. It won't even come close.
Sir,
Yeah.
yesterday you mentioned short-lived product exemptions. Which specific products are you considering, and how long is short-lived? Weeks, months?
Something to help some of the car companies with it. They're switching to parts that were made in Canada, Mexico, and other places. And they need a little bit of time because they're going to make them here. But they need a little bit of time. So I'm talking about things like that.
What about any Apple products, other cell phones?
Look, I'm a very flexible person. I don't change my mind, but I'm flexible. And you have to be. You just can't have a wall and you'll only go. No, sometimes you have to go around it, under it, or above it. There'll be maybe things coming up. I speak to Tim Cook. I helped Tim Cook recently, and that whole business. I don't want to hurt anybody. But the end result is we're going to get to the position of greatness for our country. We're the greatest economic power in the world if we're smart. If we're not smart, we're going to hurt our country very badly. We lost with China over the Biden years trillions of dollars on trade, trillions of dollars. And he let them fleece us. And we can't do that anymore. And you know what? I don't blame China at all. I don't blame President Xi. I like him. He likes me. I mean, who knows? Who the hell cares? But you know what? What?
Give me updates with talks with China.
Let me just tell you this. I don't blame China. I don't blame Vietnam. I see their meeting today. Is that wonderful? It's a lovely meeting. They're meeting, like trying to figure out how do we screw the United States of America. Don't forget, the European Union was formed to do just that. The European Union was formed to hurt the United States and on trade. And they get us on NATO because they don't pay their bills. But now, since I got involved, they have been paying their bills. I took in over $600 billion for NATO. Nobody took in anything. I mean, they were all delinquent. They had 8 nations out of 28 paid their bills. The rest of them were way delinquent. And I said, if you don't pay your bills, we're not going to protect you anymore. And the money poured in over 600. The Secretary General last week made that statement. He said, I've never seen anything like it. We couldn't get anybody to pay because the United States was footing the bill for NATO. Well, we got hurt there, and we got hurt on trade, likewise, European Union. And they've got to come to the table, and they're trying to. They're trying to. But the European Union has taken terrible advantage. They don't take our food products. They don't take our cars. We have millions of their cars, BMW, Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, many others. They come in by the millions. There are no Chevrolets in Munich, I can tell you that. I said to Angela Merkel, and when she was there, as she was letting millions of people infiltrate Germany, which was not so good from, we would call them illegal immigrants, but she made them legal. But I said to her, and I got along with her very well, I said, how many Chevrolets do we have in Munich or Frankfurt? Why, none, Donald, none. I said, you're right. And yet we take in millions and millions of cars. No, those days are over. Okay, thank you very much, everybody.
De lo que ocurrió dentro de la oficina oval en la Casa Blanca, este encuentro histórico, una fecha histórica en la que el presidente Nayib Bukele sostuvo esta reunión tan importante, acompañado de sus ministros, la embajadora, la secretaria de Comunicaciones, dentro de la Casa Blanca con el presidente Donald Trump, el secretario de Estado Marco Rubio, el vicepresidente J.D. Vance. Parte de los temas que se han hablado, bueno, el mismo presidente Donald Trump mencionaba, tienen un presidente genial, un mensaje para los salvadoreños sobre pues la popularidad que goza el presidente Nayib Bukele, como ya sabemos, uno de los líderes mejor evaluados por parte de los salvadoreños. También mencionaba, este es el momento de las mejores relaciones. Él mencionaba que tiene excelentes relaciones con el presidente Nayib Bukele y esto pues obviamente se muestra a través de esta reunión. Es uno de los pocos líderes que se ha reunido con el presidente Donald Trump acá en la Casa Blanca durante su segundo mandato. Sabemos de que ya habían tenido un encuentro previo hace algunos años y en esta ocasión ha sido recibido con todos los honores acá en la Casa